being live streamed. All right, well, good morning, everyone. This is JJ Richa with Pismo Ventures and the National Venture Plan Competition. I wanted to welcome everyone today, and especially David Friedman, who's going to provide us with a great webinar this morning. Before he gets started, just want to give you a little bit of an update. So we have everybody's now submitting their startup questionnaire, so make sure you do it before the 12th, because we will make the decision by the 14th, and we need everyone to have their questionnaire done by the 12th. And then the live judging and live events, virtually live, will start on the 19th of October, which is Tuesday, with companies that move into round 2. They will be doing 5-minute pitch and 5-minute Q&A. So be ready to do that. We have a lot of great companies this year. And so in each of the categories, B2B, B2C, and life sciences, we will have 15 companies. And then we created a wildcard category. It's also will have 15 companies, giving chances to some of the companies that don't directly make it into their respective category to have a second chance to pitch to the investors as well. So we look forward to seeing you in a couple of weeks. But meanwhile, please complete your questionnaire. Webinars are great webinars this week. So you don't want to miss this one, which is great. You don't want to miss the one this Friday, and you don't want to miss the one on Monday. So it's Monday, Wednesday, Friday throughout the month of October. I think we're missing one day, but other than that, it's almost Monday, Wednesday, Friday every week. So hopefully you'll come and watch every one of those, because they're great webinars, great educational experience. Some of the real professionals in the industry will be here as well. You can ask them questions that you can't ask anywhere else, where you get direct and honest feedback on and answers to your questions. So great to have you. If you have questions for me, we'll keep them till the end about the competition or about Pismo Ventures. But for now, I will leave it up to Mr. Friedman to take it from here.
All right, I'm going to go share my screen. Welcome, everybody. What I promised to do is do this within an hour, so I don't bore you to death, and to not bore me to death, frankly. Ask questions. I mean, this is hopefully interactive. We'll put questions in the chat box. I'll try to look at them. JJ will look at them as well, and we'll just see what happens and go from there. And I'm hoping this provides some value, and it's just my perspective. We use some of these concepts in at TCA, as well as in the Small Business Development Center. Now, I've been a member of TCA since 2009. I'm currently president of Tech Coast Angels in Orange County, a member of the Board of Governors. And I'm also a consultant with 2 small business development centers, which help startups and businesses that are at the beginning of their growth cycle. I'm part of the UCI Applied Innovation Small Business Development Center, as well as Octane. So look forward to helping you in any way we can, either as TCA or as SBDC. I've known JJ for 12 years, and it's been a good relationship. He's also a member of TCA. So again, hopefully this works. What I want to try to convey is that this is basically about pitching, and a couple of different tools that you can use that will help you in your pitch. So with that in mind, the basic purpose of a pitch is one thing and one thing only. It's to get the investor, and I don't care if it's an angel investor or if it's a VC or a friend and family. Your goal is to make sure that they say, tell me more. And eventually they will say, I don't need any more information. I'll just give you a check. That's the ideal of ideals, okay? So you're not going to necessarily on that first pitch or the elevator pitch or your first pitch to an angel investor get your entire round. It is a long, somewhat laborious project and process. Just want to remind people that when Airbnb, when Uber started their pitching, because it was so disruptive, such a different way to do business, a different process, a different technology, it took 30 to 40 different pitches to different angel groups to get that traction. Don't get discouraged. You have to have this internal fortitude, but it will work. But again, keep in mind the basic purpose of a pitch. Whatever the level of pitch is, tell me more. Okay. Now, when we look at we look at the life cycle, and I think this is important to take a look at where things are and why you have to do things a little bit differently over time. You have to focus on different things. You look at this chart, it's called capital sources over a life cycle. And you notice there's a curve in the middle, and there's profit and there's time. Early on, as you investigate, you develop your proof of concept, as you develop your MVP and you start getting pre-seed capital. Your profitability is nil to non-existent. It's probably showing a negative profit or negative EBITDA. You don't really have a product. You're not generating a lot of revenue. The risk is relatively high of failure at this point. In TCA, when we see, let's say we see 10 deals, we'll probably see one that big, hopefully will be that big hitter. And then we'll see maybe one or two others that will return a portion of capital. Somewhere between 6 and 7 will basically fail one way or another. Either they'll totally be a write-off, or they'll just linger, for a long time. Where the angels get involved is in this part of pre-seed, seed, and startup. But notice that the profitability is the lowest at that point in time. So the revenues take place in this area where I'm circling, if you can see that, and that area is called the valley of death. The angels invest in this area because we believe that there's an opportunity, but it's also at the highest risk point. VCs come in way after. VCs start coming in when you start seeing the revenue, growth is evident, and then the risk is reduced. When we look at a deal, we're looking at a deal to return 10x to 15x, and we have to have fairly good confidence that that will actually happen. So we go through a variety of processes. We go through your application, the pre-screening, the screening, the due diligence, and we make a determination whether or not we want to invest or not. It's easier as you get further down the line when you start seeing revenue, you start seeing traction, you start seeing more customer growth, you start seeing a mushrooming of more customers coming on board. So VCs get involved then, and then as the profitability starts soaring, you'll wind up with either an IPO, banks get involved, they're willing to then lend you money because everything is great. They're not willing to lend you money early on. But I think it's important to just take a look at the capital sources over the life cycle and recognize where we play in this area, this valley of death. So your arguments, your presentation, your pitch has to crisply encapsulate why you have the best opportunity. So just give you a perspective. When we look at failure, and again, this is a risk reward thing in the angel community. This is from CB Insights, who did a study of, I think, 101 different companies. Notice that the number one thing on failure is product or services that are into the market, but they don't meet the market need. They don't meet it for one reason or another. The dogs don't eat the dog food, so to speak. Lack of liquidity, you can't run out of cash. And you'll hear from other presentations what you want to do to make sure you don't run out of cash. The funding strategies are very important. The third most critical issue less. You don't really have a team. It's dominated by a founder and other people are just there. But take a look at the kinds of things and why startups fail, and you get a perspective on what you want to do to convince an angel or other investor to invest in your company. Having a good team, having good products, product market fit, as they call it, which takes care of the number one reason. having a good differentiable product or company, having a clear moat, very critical to success. Okay. There are 5 basic questions you want to ask and address when you do your pitching. Number 1, is there a market and is it growing? Will customers buy your solution? Can you make the product a service? Do you have IP? Is the product revolutionary? Is there real competition? And don't think that I do not want to say to an investor, sorry, we do not have any competition at all. This is brand new. There's always competition. When I was at Boeing, I was vice president of Boeing, introducing internet services in the air. We believed that the competition was the existing entertainment system. What we didn't realize is that we compete for people's time on board, and people like to eat, people like to sleep. So we kind of missed what the competitive environment really was. And don't look at the competitors today. Think about the potential competitors out there that can actually develop what you're doing, and it may cost them more money. That may be good or bad. They may want to buy you. If it's a large company like Google or Facebook, they may want to buy you instead of doing it themselves. And many companies have that strategy, but some don't. And finally, IP does not necessarily guarantee you success. The strength of the IP will be evaluated during due diligence. Most important thing is, can you make money? What is your business model? How will you market and sell the service? What is your EBITDA and top line growth? Because in an event where we look at events to give us our return, an event may be a buyout by another company, an IPO, but most likely it's a buyout. And we look at a multiple based upon either EBITDA or based upon revenue. And that's very critical. And when you're doing your pitch, you'll probably come up with a chart that shows here are companies in this market space that were bought out, and it was bought out by X multiple of the EBITDA, X multiple of the revenue. Can you support the product and service, and how extensible is it? Is this a one-trick pony? Is this WD-40, or is it a product line platform that enables you to develop additional products off that basic platform? Maybe the products are products you sell directly. Maybe it's an API or an SDK that is sold or licensed to somebody else for them to develop products. And those revenue items, those what we call routes to revenue, will be indicated in your P&L sheet. And who is on your operational team and boards? The team is real critical, as I mentioned, but there's 2 parts of the team. There's the operational team that will execute the plan, and how well they execute. Is there a history? Did they work together? Have they committed to what they said they were going to do? And then there's the board of advisors. The board of advisors are really critical because they can bring deals in. I'm just going to stop for a second. I see some things in the chat box. I'm not going to see if anyone is saying, okay. It just says, if you have questions, post them in the chat box. Okay. Don't see any at this point. But anyway, these are the 5 questions you want to address, and the various ways to address them in your pitch. Okay. When you do, this is a system. So when you pitch to investors, you want to make sure there's context. I've seen so many pitches, JJ has as well. And if you've ever attended these pitching contests, you hear these presentations, but it takes forever, 3, 4, 5 slides, sometimes 5 or 10 minutes to really get the essence of what they're trying to say. So context, setting it up initially. What is the market? How are you going to be different? What are you offering? How is it unlike other competitors? Is the context you want to get across early on. I believe it. This is what I teach to my clients in terms of making sure early on at the first discussion point, that context is very clear. The second thing after context is building a relationship and showing relevancy to the investor. Make it personal. If you're developing a healthcare system or a diagnostic system, ask the question. Imagine you had this problem. Would this work? Put them in the shoes of the buyer, put them in the shoes of the user, put them in the shoes of somebody who would actually be benefiting from using the product. And then there's the story. So you have to go through context, you have to go through relevancy and relationship, then you tell the story. And the final thing you do is summarize why is this really a good investment opportunity? The context is really what you want is the elevator pitch. This is the perfect pitch. Again, the objective is to tell me more. And you're going to talk about things such as the team and the problem. And these are the anchors for your 60-second or 120-second pitch or your 30-second pitch. And you just have to figure out what's more important. If you're at a meeting with other investors, let's say you go to one of these pitch fests, you probably don't have more than about 30 to 60 seconds. So you tailor your elevator pitch for that. If you have a little more time, maybe at a cocktail party, you may want to have a 120-second pitch. The point is you may have multiple elevator pitches. But if you have a strong team, start with the team. If you say, me and Elon Musk are starting this new business, you kind of get me at Elon Musk. If you're talking about somebody coming out of school, you don't really have a team together at this point. You don't really have the credibility because you don't have the background, but you have a really great idea. You have a great product. You have great technology. Start with the product and the technology and share what it is. The elements of this elevator pitch include who you are, the target market, the product essence, the uniqueness, comparison and differentiation, and the benefits. And if you do have time and you have more time to give this pitch, depending on where you are and what venue, talk about some of the team, talk about the revenue and traction you have, talk about the maybe some of the non-dilutive funding you have, talk about the deal, talk about the exit. But you don't have to do everything and rush through it. You want to be able to get the major points across, and I'll share with you a mechanism to do that. So here's a perfect example, I think, of an elevator.
David, quick one. So there is a Q&A question, but also I was going to mention that it's a great point you made on the team. But if they're new, they could build an advisory board. That could
that's
really
what I was saying. You want that advisory board there.
But there's a question. If you want, I can read it for you, or you can click on the Q&A.
Yeah, go ahead.
Can you address the best strategies for sector-specific companies pitching to angels who aren't straight tech? For example, we are a med device startup, so the revenue and the go-to-market strategy are different. I would appreciate how to make an industry-specific pitch more accessible to angels who may not have that industry expertise.
Yeah, okay, great question. Number one, if it's medtech, TCA OC is very heavy into medtech. So we have people who understand the medtech environment. You're not going to have revenue for a significant amount of time. And most likely the product in essence is the company, and it will get taken out prior to your 501c or other regulatory or, the regulatory rules that you're going to have to go, hoops that you're going to go through, or the tests that you're going to do. So the first thing is find those angels that understand your business. Life science angels, Tech Coast Angels, Orange County, San Diego Tech Coast Angels, and others invest in medtech. So you want to find that right group. That will be the first thing. Number two, it still gets down to context. You should be able to do a good analogy or metaphor to make sure people understand what you're trying to do. So here's an issue where this elevator pitch may be relevant to a point. This is an elevator pitch for a medical company. This is one actually, it's a little modification of one we actually heard. I remember this from about 8-9 years ago. I haven't followed the company, but think about what the context is that he's setting up. He said, "My name is John, and I have a PhD in microbiology. I have worked for the largest pharma companies." So you now have credibility in who this person is. "My brother, sister, and mother all had cancer. I have a goal to help them and others fight this disease, and I will not stop until I'm successful." Now you have some relevancy and an understanding of what the driver of this person is. "I developed a diagnostic test, which is the product or service, based upon a sample of blood that is unique in the market using CAR-T. The cost is less than $10 per test. Unlike," this is a very big key because now I've set up who my target is, what my differentiation is, but now I'm going to flip it around to get better context. John said, unlike other screenings and tests, you don't need a doctor's prescription, and you can do it in the privacy of your own home. The tests have shown a 98% success rate on detection and can be used as a standalone or in conjunction with other lab tests. Interesting, this was 7 years ago, and it's kind of similar to what Cologuard is doing. I don't know if they're using CAR T, but you kind of get the context. You don't have to be a microbiologist or a diagnostician or a clinician to really understand it. The issue then is presenting this case in a way that shows you can actually execute on this plan and it can be taken out at a profit. So hopefully that answers, your question on med device sector specific. If I were doing something in more technology, a higher tech area, find those angel groups that are in higher tech. You're not going to find a lot of people in these general angel groups that are going to have this unique expertise. You may find a few, which is good. You want to make sure they understand it because they will be the influencers to the other people around. The people who don't have that experience, maybe people coming from real estate, will look to people like JJ or myself. I'm a techie by training. And say, does this make sense? Does the technology make sense? Can we see it being executed? So that's the way it's kind of done. And again, if that doesn't answer the question, answer a different question, I'll try to address that. But this is context. This is an elevator pitch, okay? Relevancy means building rapport. Now I'm standing in front of an angel group, either for a pre-screen and screening. I need to build this rapport, make it personal. So on the card, the experience on diagnostics, the elevator pitch I just gave, make it personal. Imagine your family had, you had somebody, a loved one that had cancer. How would you want to, find something that can help them out? Imagine your wife, imagine your daughter, imagine you, imagine a colleague. I like the word imagine because most people are visual, and now they're going to think about and see how they put themselves in using or buying what you're trying to sell them. You can also ask things like, do you have the following problem? Because a lot of people have been taught in pitching to angels, put down what the problem is, put down the solution. I still like context even before you get the problem and solution. Can you see yourself in this situation? Again, all these points that I'm raising, make it personal, build that relevancy. Because if you're pitching in public or even on a Zoom call, you want to see those heads bobbing. Then when you see those heads bobbing, pitch to them. They're going to be the ones that are going to help you sell to the other angels in the group. Do your homework before you meet with the group or in person. Think about who the background of the people are. This goes to the question that was just raised. If you're in a sector, make sure you understand who, if that angel group invest in that sector. Look at their portfolio. Go on the Tech Coast Angels website. We just reconstructed it. You'll see all of our portfolio companies. You'll see our investment theses. New York Angels, Pasadena Angels, Sand Hill Angels, New Mexico Angels, Desert Angels, Ohio Tech Angels. We all have websites. We all talk about our portfolio companies, and you'll see what they invested. Then look at the individual members. So on the Tech Coast Angels website, you'll see little snapshots and bios of the members. Find out which group they're with, then try to find them early on. In fact, maybe even reach out to them on LinkedIn. I'll talk to most people if they have a really good idea, especially if it's in the areas of software or technology, or even in medtech, which I like to invest in. Find out their interests, find out the investment philosophy, and find out the prior investments. So doing this homework helps you build that elevator pitch for them and helps you build this rapport and show relevancy. The story is the critical part. Remember, we talked about context, relevancy, and now we get to the story, and we'll show you how to build the story. The story, if you have a strong team, start with the team. If you have strong product and IP, start with the problem and solution. Address the following elements in your own style. Everyone tells stories differently. There's no right way or wrong way to tell it, but you have to cover the points. The most important critical part of telling the story, passion. Show your passion. Don't just stand there saying, "Oh, I have this really cool product. It's really neat. I've gotten this technology." It doesn't show the excitement and the passion. So when you pitch, one of the tricks that is used, stand up and pitch. You inhale better, your diaphragm works better. I use my hands. I'm a New Yorker. I mean, it's crazy, but I always use my hands to bring people in, to show that I'm excited. Stand up when you pitch, even if it's on Zoom. But cover the following points, like we talked about before, the 6 points. Is there a market and is it growing? And don't obfuscate what the market is by throwing out statistics that are irrelevant. Don't say that the market is $6 trillion when really the specific subsegment of the market is diagnostics and it's really a $6 billion market, which is still large enough. So you don't have to overdo it. You have to be very precise and you have to show the relevancy of your product to the relevant market segment. We'll get into that. It's called TAM, SAM, and SOM, right? That's just, and you're going to hear about that, I would assume, over the next several, days or weeks with other presentations and webinars that JJ put together. Can I make money? What is the business model? Are you SaaS? That's good. You transactional? That's okay. Are you freemium? Maybe okay. Then the issue is conversion. What is the P&L over a period of time? How are you going to make money? And when you do the P&L, if you have multiple product lines, specify not one revenue number, but the different revenue or routes to revenue for the different product lines, because then we can see the growth in each product line. And you may have your product line start at different points in times. If it's a platform, you may have a product starting in year 1, the next product starting in year 2, the next product starting in year 3. That tells us that even if you have a failure in one area, you can compensate with the other. What funding do you need and help to succeed? So when you go to an angel, some of the angel groups want to contribute not only funding, that's passive investment, but also help, post-investment help. Take that help. A lot of the angels have expertise. Try to leverage their expertise. Try to put them on the board. Put them on the board as a board observer, put them on your advisory board, as JJ pointed out. Amazing amount of networking that is done to help you succeed. Most of the angels have pretty strong networks. Look at LinkedIn, look at how many people they connect with, look at their network. It's very critical because the job doesn't stop when you get funding. And we actually want to understand your funding strategy. Are you funding this one time? You don't need any more money? You need money for a second seed, a bridge round, an A round, a B round, the C round. Because if we're investing early on, we're going to see dilution. We want to understand the effect of that dilution on our overall net return at the end. How will you execute the plan? You don't need extreme detail, but you should have that as a backup, because in due diligence, we will get into understanding your funding, your execution of the plan. We'd like to see how your funding will relate to the new products you'll introduce, or the marketing programs, or the sales programs. But most important, we want to see how the team is put together, how the team will execute the plan, and we want to really understand your sales and marketing plan. If you're really a new to the world type product, it's never been done before, it's really disruptive, how are you going to shape the market for your product to take over from a competitive product which may not be as good? This is particularly true where many existing users get stuck on what they're doing today. We see this in the medical profession. To sell a new medical process or sell a new medical device, you have to change the behavior, and that's not necessarily easy. So you need to back it up from when you introduce the product to making sure people understand what the effect would be. When we did internet on the airplane, that was significantly different than what was being done before. We spent a couple of years influencing people, or trying to influence people, that on board an airplane, you actually want to, pay money to stay connected for a variety of reasons. In 2003 to 2005, when we did the shaping of the market, it was kind of foreign. Now everyone takes it for granted you're going to be on an airplane with internet. But think about 15 years ago, very different scenario, very different technology at the time. You didn't have smartphones. You had PCM CIA cards that went into a slot on the computer. Wi-Fi was not necessarily robust. Things change. Make it relevant to the market space, the economics, the environment, the technology that's available today. And then one of the things that I think is part of the story is making sure that you can codify the risk and the impact. And while I put down this is potentially optional, have that as a backup plan. Make sure people, especially the investors, understand what risk and how you're going to handle that risk a priori, so you don't wind up being surprised. I always like to look at risk and the landmines. I always ask this question: what are the landmines you're going to face? When are you going to face those landmines? How are you going to handle it? Who's going to handle it? And because if you don't have a plan for the landmines, then you're probably going to fail. And unfortunately, some of the investments I did early on, I was not smart enough to ask about the landmines, and I made bad assumptions. But now I've gotten a lot smarter because of failure. So now I want to understand that really early on. So in telling the story, and I'm not going to cover this, we use a concept called the business model canvas. Okay, Robert Stacy, who's a member of Tech Coast Angels, is going to explain this, I believe, on Friday. But I thought it was important just to mention that this is a really good tool to use because it lays out the elements of your story. Now, you may not cover every part of the story in your original pitch, but in due diligence, all these components will be looked at. But the real key issue you want is this, that I believe, with all the background, be it on the business model canvas or on a bunch of sticky notes or on scrap papers, there's a concept called the message map. I think this is really critical. Again, most people are visual. And if you can see this and put together the message map, be it for pitching here or making presentations to the board or even making presentations to the press, if sometimes you get involved with them. I found this concept, which I learned back in the 90s when I was at US Cellular, to be extremely critical and very applicable to the angel environment and pitching in general. It's a simple way to structure a story. There's a concept called home base. This is the essence of the message that you want to get across, what the essence of your product or company is. So when we go back to the elevator pitch, the essence of that message is we have a product using CAR-T that is cheap and effective in diagnosing cancer early on. Okay, and then we have supporting pillars. Supporting pillars are the 3 to 4 or 5 basic points you want to get across and have the angel investors understand why those pillars support your fundamental home base or basic thesis. And then proof points support individual pillars. And I'll show you how you build it. I don't know if there are any questions. JJ, any questions so far?
Yes, there is a question in the chat, if you can read it. It says, what is the recommended funding strategy if your company is new, 12 months making 10K MRR revenue, cash flow positive, and growing steadily, but not enough to bring the founders over full time to really grow it? Angel or organic growth? That's the question.
Yeah, hard to say without getting in more specifics, but if you can do organic growth, I think that would be better from the perspective of the founders and the team, because you don't give away equity. But even if you go to the angels, think about when you go to an angel, you're going to give up about 20 to 30% of your equity. So what you can do is have one round of financing. I'll give you a great example where this worked perfectly for both the angels as well as the founding team. There's a woman named Lori Torres founded a company named Parcel Pending. Parcel Pending was taken out within 4 years, I believe, for about $125 million. The only investment they got, and they were going to grow they were going to grow operationally fine, through organic growth, but they wanted to be able to jumpstart the growth, get more marketing and sales, attract some people. So they were able to go to TCA. That I think they asked for $1 million. We funded them for 1.2 million. They didn't need any other funding round. So they got $1.2 million. I forgot what the percentage of equity they had to give away. But let's say they gave away 20%. They still retained 80% And on $120 million takeout, they retain somewhere in the neighborhood of $90 million for the founders and the exec team. It's not a bad deal. Other companies may get taken out more. If you have a bigger problem and you're not going to be able to sustain organic growth, then you may have to go through different rounds of financing. So, but again, you get a smaller portion of a much larger pie. It really gets into the size of the market segment, the size of the opportunity. But I'm more than happy to discuss it offline. Can't really give you a better answer without understanding the problem. And there's
I'll add to that that was about 22 times return to the investors at TCA on average.
Yeah, that was a good deal when I was investing through the fund. I kicked myself for not investing separately, but it made a lot of people very, very happy.
Yep.
So the message map is designed as a visual tool. This is what I was saying as a home base. These are pillars and they're proof points, and I'll fill this in for you. This one is it's a real company. It was a client of mine. They offered a variety of services to help people fix things around the house, sort of like an Angie's List meets home base meets something else. And their home base was the following. Aardvark, not the name of the company, but I thought it was a cool name because it comes up one of the first on the listings in the Yelp search. Aardvark offers 3 levels of service: scheduled, on demand, and do it yourself, from qualified and responsible suppliers at a cost less than other competitors for both users and suppliers. So this is home base. This is the essence of your business. Or I go back to the one we talked about on the diagnostic for cancer. You can put in a component of that elevator pitch. Then the pillars are needed to support that point of view, because this is how you're going to build your pitch. So in this case, what we decided that there are 4 fundamental components in that message map. There's technology in the upper right. There's the team in the lower right. There's the customer base, size of the market and growth. And then there's the financials. You can change this, but fundamentally, team, technology, customer, and financials should fundamentally be the core of your message map. Okay. And when you construct your presentation, you could construct the actual slides based upon this. So let's just, for example, look at technology. They had 3 patents. They developed middleware to connect to suppliers. They have a AAA system for accounting, authorization, and billing. Let's look at the team. The team had a CEO that started a $1 billion company before. Operational execs had a combination of youth and gray hairs with 40 years experience. And their advisors and operational executives have relationships that will help them in sales. This goes back to JJ's point. Make sure when you look at team, you look at not only the operational exec and but you look at the board of advisors. The financials, EBITDA growth is going to be strong over 5 years. The business model yields 3 routes to revenue. So it has product 1, product 2, product 3. And this is the scheduled, on demand, and do it yourself in this case. And they had different growth patterns. They had $500,000 in prior money. We always like to understand if the founders and the early investors have invested. So we want to make sure that we ask that question. So in the ask slide, prior money, founding money, does the board of advisors have skin in the game? We want to see that. It doesn't necessarily hold true in the medical area or med tech, where you get a lot of grant money. So it's a little different in that segment. But in general, we want to understand the skin in the game and how much money has put in, because it affects the valuation. The valuation in this case was capped at $3 million. We're seeing valuations now inflated. The average valuation coming to an angel investor is about $6.5 million in the United States. And in California, it's up to about $8.5 million. We don't necessarily like to invest in inflated deals. If you're telling me that you've invested only $500,000 in prior money, don't come to us and say we have a valuation's $10 million. You'll get a lot of pushback. You have to be able to prove it, and you prove it by looking at other companies that have received funding at certain valuations. So look at Crunchbase, look at Capital IQ, look at PitchBook. And then finally, in this case, in the message map, there's the customer. Excuse me. We have a market that's about $2.5 billion. It's growing at about 20%. We have clear customer testimonials. The dogs do like the dog food. And I'm involved in a product where actually we're making dog food, and the dogs actually do like the dog food, which is kind of interesting. Then there's competitive advantage. And the competitive advantage could be due to technology, can be due to process, can be based upon people. All right. So when you look at this thing, you can actually put down these points and you can actually visualize it. You can memorialize it in your mind. About 80% of the people are visual. So it's a very good tool when you are talking to somebody. And even if you're going to use this in developing your slide deck, your PowerPoints, but also as you talk to people when they ask, tell me more, you can tell me more about technology. You'll have a visualization of that pillar and the basic components below it. You're talking to a financial person, you'll have a visual of the elements of why this is a financially good deal. Okay. And in summary, I just want to make sure people understand you use the pitch as a reminder and evidence and credible evidence showing why things work out, where the traction is, the customers, the testimonials, the investors, the grants, why this is an investable opportunity. When we look at in TCA and a lot of the other angel groups, we kind of have a scoring. Team represents about 30%, opportunity represents 25%, product market fit represents 15% of the scoring. I'm going to come back to that in a second. Unique and sustainable advantage 10%, go-to-market plans 10%, and others, everything else 10%. However, when we look at that, why companies fail, I think we need to, as angels, we need to relook at where we put our emphasis. And product market fit, especially as you go later in the development of that product, is becoming more important from an investability point of view. So I would believe this is going to change and your product market fit will jump up at least on par with the team eventually in scoring. So that's the essence of the presentation. I'll leave this up there. I'll open it up to any and all questions you can ask about this, something else. I know it was fairly quick. I think the slides can be used to, and the YouTube video and the recording can be used to relook at it again. But hopefully you have a good essence of what you're doing in presenting a perfect pitch. You want to make sure there's context, build relevancy and relationship, tell you a good story, and summarize why you're investable. So with that, JJ, we can look at any chat questions and go through them, and I'll try to address as many in the next 15 minutes as we can, okay?
Yeah, so anybody who has any questions, they can still post it in the Q&A, but also you can post it. Oh, and here's David's information. Everybody's asking for that. So here's his email address and phone number.
Yeah, best way to reach me, by the way, is email.
Yeah.
I normally I'll try to address the emails at least every day, you know. So there's a webinar poll to ask if it's, was this webinar helpful to you? Answer, tell me what else, if there's any better ways to address things. I'm more than happy to make changes going forward, whatever you want. But ask questions right now. As long as you have JJ and I here, ask anything you want in terms of pitching or angel investing or even Tech Coast Angels.
Yes, also, and you can, if you would like to ask the question live, feel free to raise your hand and I'll bring you in. And here's Thomas doing that. So Thomas is coming in.
And then I want to answer the other one. Can we use message map as a slide? You can, but it gets a little complex. The one thing you don't want to do when you give a pitch is you can use it as a kind of an interesting executive summary, by the way. But in pitching, if you put so much information on one slide, the people who you're pitching to will read more than listen. And I think you want people to listen to you and get the excitement and passion that you have. That's
Yeah.
just.
Go ahead, Thomas.
Thank you, by the way, very much. It's been very helpful and educational today. The question I have is, you get endlessly solicited for accelerators and this and that out there. What's kind of your take on the time spent doing those, that they actually produce anything for the actual startup, especially early stage?
Well, if you go to accelerators or incubators?
Yeah, but specifically, but I feel like there's so many. How do you choose, and how do you, as a CEO, how do you know which one to give the time to?
Yeah, so you can choose in a couple of different ways. Number one, I would also look to the small business development centers and the expertise that they have. They may have the best contacts in accelerators and incubators. In fact, I'll put a shameless plug in for a woman named Manal Risha. And there's a resemblance. They're married, but Manal is the director of the Small Business Development Center in Orange County in Irvine. Extremely bright woman, has a good team that can help you if you need, general support, or the accelerator at UCI, or the accelerator at Launchpad at Octane. But there are good accelerators. Long Beach Accelerator is great. Techstars, Y Combinator, they have a good
Expert Dojo. Yeah.
Expert Dojo. They have good relationships. But I was going to say Y Combinator and Techstars particularly have very good networks. And you're going to be looking at the accelerator not only to help you with your presentation, that's the purpose of them. They'll give you, some of them, like Expert Dojo, will actually fund you. But also the network. So you have to evaluate that program relative to what you need. The Small Business Development Center consultants can help out. If you have a specific question based upon your unique company, call me, send me a note. I'll give you my best advice, but you have to really investigate it. But with the accelerators and incubators, particularly Techstars and Y Combinator, you're giving up about 7% of your business for anywhere between 75 to 150K of capital, just to let you know. Not cheap.
Yeah, so there are plenty of those, Thomas. You have to do your homework, but you can always ask me, ask David, ask anyone from Pismo or Tecos Angels, or any potentially someone you can trust with a response to that. But we deal with a lot of them all the time. And you're right, it is very confusing, especially you're trying to really get to where you want, and you get bombarded by all these different accelerators and incubators. So do your due diligence and ask around.
Yeah, here's a really interesting question, and we hear this several times. We have a business, we have some ideas, we may even have a first product, but we know that it may be a platform, it's going to be extensible, it's going to expand over time. So the way to explain that is what you have today. And then what I would do is show, sorry for the noise in the background, but what I would do is show a chart that shows, it basically is just a timeline chart. And above the line, you're going to put down the products and services, or the marketing or sales programs you're going to put together. And then on the horizontal axis, it's time. Below that is going to be the funding. So you're going to basically look at the funding relative to the implementation of your different products. That's the way you show it. In addition, when you look at your 5-year P&L, you're going to put down the routes to revenue, and you may find that one of the routes to revenue starts in year 1. As I mentioned, one may start in year 2, one may start in year 3, so you're correlated. But showing where you can take the business is important, because it's important for the angel to understand what they're going to get involved with, if the funding that they're putting in now is going to sustain over the 5-year period, or if you're going to need additional funding, but it encapsulates it really well. So tying it all together makes sense to me.
All right, Thomas, any other questions?
That was the most sizable well use of my time today. So thank you very much.
Well, that
right.
makes me happy then, because JJ told me if I don't do a good job, he's never going to hire me again.
Yeah, he's fired.
Yeah, I'm hired. Yeah. By the way,
right,
I don't get paid for this. This I do it out of a passion and love for the ecosystem, just to let you know.
We all do this. If anyone thinks we do it for any other reason, they're crazy. So
well, I do it to make money through the investments in TCA. I mean, let's be
that's different. Yeah,
that's a different issue.
That's a completely different issue. All right, so we have a bunch of questions. Kate says, can you talk about how TCA chapters interact with one another? Do the groups only do deals together, or will LA invest in something OC doesn't?
Yeah, so the groups are somewhat different. They'll do things together, but they'll do things separately. For example, in San Diego, they do more in biopharma, life sciences, and wireless. In Orange County, we do a lot in cyber, IoT, med tech, and software, and general technology. And in LA, they overlap somewhat with OC, but they're up in Silicon Beach. They do a lot of work in gaming, media, entertainment as well. So when a deal comes in, we'll look at the geography and try to put them into the right group within TCA. We also have Inland Empire, which deals in a lot of earlier stage startups. We'll try to put them into the right group. Sometimes if let's say Orange County gets a deal, we like it, and we're investing in it, we're doing due diligence, we'll try to source that deal to the other networks to get the entrepreneur in front of the other networks. Of late, we're trying to do due diligence one time, not to do it 3 times to not drive the entrepreneur crazy. So we're trying to look at integrated due diligence teams. But we do share leads across the board. We have a platform called Procedure. Everyone can get access to any of our deals, be they standard members today or virtual members. And we have virtual members in Los Angeles, as far flung as India, as well as in Abu Dhabi. We just picked up a new member from Abu Dhabi. So we have a lot of different members everywhere. They invest in different things.
All right. So some people are asking about the recording. So the recording will be available by tomorrow morning. It is right now being broadcasted live on YouTube. So the recording will be available on YouTube by tomorrow morning. Please you'd have to go to the Pismo Ventures YouTube channel. Also, when you go there and you're viewing it, why not click on follow us? So that way we get more people following us, or subscribe, whatever that may be. We would appreciate that. All right, so there's a couple more questions in the Q&A, then we go back to the chat questions.
Okay.
This is Hillcamp. How do we characterize big players who might jump in the new niche we define as competitors?
Say that again. I'm not sure I understand the question.
I'm not sure I understand it either. How do we characterize big players who might jump in the new niche we define as competitors?
Yeah, because so Google can do a lot of things. If you're talking about a big competitor, you should make it clear what they're, you look at competition. When you compete, they'll either have a really good understanding of that customer base, or they'll have a really good competency set. So you should take a look at the larger companies that have those competencies. That is a good news, bad news scenario, as I mentioned. The good news is they may actually buy you out, because it's easier to buy you out for a price than to try to invent the wheel from scratch. They'll buy you out, put you as part of the team. Google did this with WhatsApp. They did it with Oculus. They did it with Instagram, and that's the normal occurrence. But the only thing you should really do is be aware of them, make sure you understand them. They can also be good investors in you early on. They could be a strategic investor, but you should recognize the fact that these large players could come in, and if you don't have anything really unique, can actually eat your lunch. that may affect the way you look at your IP strategy. You may not want to put the IP as a patent. You may want to do it as a trade secret. So there's a little implication there.
Yep. All right. So we have one from Douglas. I feel like there may be varying level of details in the deck based on medium. For instance, deck submission, video submissions, 3, 5, 15-minute, live, on stage. Do you have an advice on adjusting decks based on this?
Yeah, you just got to figure out who, it goes back down to making it relevant to that angel group or the investor group. Some people like videos. I don't. I rather have a presentation. I think videos are really good if you're trying to just source it out to a large distribution. Some people may want to read the video. I personally don't want to sit through 2 minutes or 5 minutes or 10 minutes. Give me a slide deck. I can go through those pretty quickly and get the essence. Maybe in that kind of sending it out, a message map would really work the best. You know, when you really think about it, it tells me on one page exactly what I'm getting into. But you have to adjust your presentation to the audience. I mean, that's just general rule of communications 101, because it's really up to you to get the message across. And if you don't get the right message across to that audience, it's your responsibility, not the audience's responsibility, to understand what you're saying. The best advice that somebody gave me years and years ago is when you make a presentation, make sure your 4th grade student can understand it.
Yep. All right. So we have a couple of questions in the chat. I have a healthcare medtech company. Oh, this is not a question. She will contact you for advice. So let's see. We have another one from Leica. If we were very early and we know that our business model is going to evolve, what is a good way to communicate that to the angel investors? Or would you suggest to have the business model fully figured out before getting out and pitching? We have an early idea.
That's the one that I was answering before about that
Yep.
chart. But yeah, you don't have to have everything figured out, but whatever you have figured out, talk about that today and the traction you get on the current business model, and then give an indication of your thinking going forward.
Yeah. So I would say, you know, you need to figure out everything you can figure out now, because any business will evolve. And as David will tell you, that by the time your business becomes a real business, it will be probably completely different than what you thought it would be in the first place.
Which is the reason why we look at the team and the advisory board, because we recognize about 90% of the companies will pivot.
That's very true. All right. Last chance for a question, live or in the Q&A. Anyone? Well, David, I really appreciate you being here today. As always, you're great at what you do, and I appreciate you all the time. Thank you so much.
Always a pleasure, JJ. For all of you entrepreneurs online, wish you success, wish you happiness. And if you have a really great idea, you know, put the application into techhostangels.com. We'll take a look at it and we'll give you at least some feedback one way or the other. It does not cost anything to apply.
Yeah,
anyway.
That's right. And then also, you know, David is going to be, you know, moderating most of the live judging events that are starting on the 19th. Again, if you make it or don't make it into round 2, and I hope all of you do, you're welcome and you're encouraged to watch all the events, because you're going to learn so much from the feedback that every company will receive from the judges. So it will be highly educational and very important for you to attend. Again, don't forget to attend all the webinars as well, because they are very valuable. Thank you all very much, and we will see you soon.
Best wishes, everyone. Stay well.
Thank you. Bye-bye.